Evening, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to SAFRL Season 5, Round 7. And as you can see by the weather conditions, what a way to start an evening. Obviously, this evening, Round 7, we're in Canada, Montreal, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Jody Scheckter, South Africa's one and only Formula One world champion, once said that Gilles Villeneuve was the fastest driver in motor racing history. But more importantly, he was the most genuine person he had ever met. Gilles Villeneuve, one of 3 Villeneuves to have driven in Formula One. His brother, also a Formula One driver, briefly, Jacques Villeneuve. And then not to be confused with Gilles Villeneuve's son, also Jacques Villeneuve. Only one of the 3 went on to become world champion, and that was Jacques. 4 cars now emerging from the pits. We have a little bit of action out on track. I think a lot of the guys reassessing the situation, reassessing their strategies and their setups. If you've prepared for an evening in the dry and you get conditions like this, it's a very, very different circuit, and you've got to approach it in a very, very different way. Already got a few viewers here in the chat. Thank you to everybody who has joined. Thanks to everybody who's helped out on the channel. We hit 100 subscribers last week, so we've got a few poll predictions, but I don't think those poll predictions are going to be relevant because there's way too much water on track, and those are dry predictions. So I think it really throws the session up in the air. And maybe some of the drivers who aren't quite fast enough for that front row tonight are going to have an opportunity to get themselves up on that front row. Remember, just the one quali session, 18 minutes long. Also, welcome to Dixie Killer on the stream. We're riding with It's Midas. One of the 2 Mercedes-Benz here tonight. His teammate also on an outlap. It's busy at Mercedes, both cars out on an outlap. That's Logic and It's Midas. No lap times as of yet, and as you can see, the entire field is on the full wet compound. So nothing easy about conditions, no intermediates for now. Maybe we'll see intermediates towards the end of the session. Let's see what the weather does. But everybody needs to be out there setting that benchmark in case the weather doesn't get better. We have about half the field on outlaps and half the field on fast laps. Half on fast, half on out. Tiago Maestro, he goes fastest lap for now, 1:23.5. That's the benchmark we can watch. Ooh, we have Mercedes facing the wrong way. That's It's Midas. Does he have a wing left? No, he doesn't. No wing on that Mercedes-Benz, so he's going to have to come into the pits and do it all over again. So I say, so important to get that benchmark. Mess up a run or 2, you find yourself at the end of the session without a lap time. Wizards goes P2, 1:23.9, and then Shane just a tenth off that in third with a 1:24 flat. It's Midas just crawling around the racetrack, trying to stay out of the way. Difficult enough to stay off the racing line when your car is broken and it's raining. It can be really frustrating, can take a really long time to get back to the pits. And in an 18-minute session, you can run out of time so quickly, especially if that second run doesn't go according to plan. Good evening to Ruben. Also now in the comment section, thanks for everybody who's joined, everyone who's watching, everyone who's supporting SAFRL. And we have that's a Mercedes again. Which Mercedes was that? We didn't see. Just caught the back end of that. But there we go. Another Mercedes. Is that the same one? It's the same one. Logic. Just trying to get around this racetrack. So difficult to drive in these conditions, but when you're missing a wing, literally just aquaplaning from one corner to the next. Out of these initial laps, fastest lap time is still to the Alfa Romeo, to the Aston Martin, sorry, Maestro. No lap time for either of the two Mercedes. Both drivers having a difficult time on that initial outlap. We have Simps going over the line. Will he be setting his first lap time? Yes, he does. It's 1:23.0. And he'll know he got heavily out of shape coming out of that final chicane. So still a lot more time in that lap. Didn't get the sort of traction he would have wanted onto the main straight. So still a few more tenths in him. Will we see the track get better? That is the other question. If the track does get better, whoever goes over the line last in the session could presumably be fastest. Lap times between the drivers really close, and when the weather conditions and the tires come into it, we can have a very, very interesting grid order for the start of round 7 in Montreal. Just see how difficult it is out there. Welsh just coming out of turn 2 ever so slowly, coming out of Rivage as slowly as he can, and the car just squirming as if he was pushing it to the limit. Really difficult conditions out there. Maestro was on provisional pole. He's been demoted by Simps, but he is now back out on track. Maestro retires from the session, goes sideways. We just caught a glimpse of that, and then the camera cut away. But Thiago Maestro becomes the first retirement of this quali session. But importantly, he does get to keep that lap time. So he's currently in P2. And he will be able to keep that position if nobody is able to beat it. He does not lose that lap time. Now Simps, currently on provisional pole. He's gone purple in sector 1. He's definitely got more time than he showed us on his last run, and we know he's got more time coming out of that final corner. We saw him get out of shape. Now slightly slower than his personal best in sector 3. And I wonder if we'll just see him back off or he'll go for it. I think he's got more time in sector 3 to find, so 1:23 flat. Is he going to be able to improve? We'll stay on board with him for the time being as he goes through this final chicane. So easy to just slip wide into the wall, but none of that this time around, and Simps goes over the line. Current best 1:23 flat. No improvement for now. Championship leader Cheddar for AlphaTauri. He sits in the pits, as does his teammate Don Rowico. No movement from the two AlphaTauris for now. Maybe just watching the weather, waiting for the rain to lighten up and go out at the very last minute. Could be a great gamble, could be a bad one. That's why it's called a gamble. Now we ride on board with the Mercedes. Both Mercedes had trouble on that first run, were not able to set a lap time. Midas even picked up damage for his troubles. So they're going around yet again looking for their first lap times of the evening. It's Midas getting out of shape on the straight, but managing to hold everything together. Sets his first lap time of the evening. It's a 1:24.1. And that's going to be good enough for P8. Now his teammate's going to head into the hairpin. No fancy name. It's literally just called the hairpin. Now he's going to head down Casino Straight. Such an important part of the racetrack. Fastest part of the racetrack. And if you get that hairpin wrong, you just never achieve the top speed that you should down this straight. Such a crucial part of the track. Logic now over the line. What's it going to be? It's good enough for P3, a 1:23.3. Further back in the field, still waiting for a lap time. McLaren driver Welsh, no time from him. Shakes, no time. He emerges from the pits as I say that. Ruan, also on a fast lap, no time from him. And then Buffelsfontein just crawling around ever so slowly. He's on an out lap, also looking for his first lap time of the evening. Now if you look at the man in P10, he's doing something slightly different. That's Jacques. Jacques went out. Did he set that lap time, or has he changed to intermediates? I think Jacques has just changed to intermediates, and he's just sitting in the pits waiting for the moment. You can see the intermediates on your screen. Means he does have those cars fitted. He does have those tires fitted to his car while sitting in the pit lane. So maybe just waiting for the moment, but not much time left. Can't tell you how much time is left because we have a constant caution. There we go. Just saw it in a flash. 6 minutes remaining in the session. Told you Maestro would be able to keep that lap time, but as drivers improve, as the track improves, he will continue to fall down that order. Here is your championship leader, Cheddar. Heads into that final chicane, now onto the main straight. Little bit out of shape on the exit, but I think he'll be happy with that. It's good enough. It's P3, nicely done, 1:22.8. Where is his teammate? His teammate's down the road, Don Rabico, and he's going really slowly, so I think he's having a build-up lap. Another one on an out lap. I was going to say he was on an out lap, but he's pulled into the pits. Wonder if drivers are just deciding if it's time for intermediates. I don't think it's time for intermediates. Can still see standing water on the track. So lots of spray. Don't think it's time for intermediates, but we could have a driver that comes out and surprises us all. In this session so far, Simps leads the way. Provisional pole, 122 point flat. Nobody's come close to that. Windsor is in P2, but it's a 122.8. So 8 tenths adrift from the leader. Then Cheddar, another 122.8. Those two really close together. Then we have Logic P4. The retired car of Maestro currently in P5. Don Rabico, P6. Shane P7. Django P8. It's Midas, P9, and Jacques making up the top 10. Let's have a look at Jacques, because he is out on track and he's on that intermediate tire. Ooh, and as you can see, not having a lot of fun there, just really getting out of shape, almost losing his front wing. So I said we needed to watch this car just to get a clear indication that it's not time for inters, and from the evidence we saw there, clearly it's not quite yet the right time. Wonder how these conditions will translate to the race. We could have a beautiful blue sky event, or we could have more of this. If you do know, let me know in the comment section what sort of weather can we expect for the race. some trackside action of Django in his Williams, currently sitting in P8. That's 124.1. And look at the cars there in that P7, P8, P9, P10. All of those cars within a tenth. It's really impressive to see the close lap times translating into the wet weather conditions. It's one thing to be that close in the dry, but to be that close in the wet. A lot of guys wouldn't have the same amount of preparation for a wet race than they would for a dry race. Same amount of knowledge when it comes to setups. So we could have a favourite or two in this race that maybe just gets the setup wrong. When rain comes into play, it can really stir things up. And that's what we're hoping for here tonight. So far in this championship though, it's been all about AlphaTauri. AlphaTauri lead the championship, but not by that much. The lead just 19 points. So all it takes is one bad night for the team and you can lose that lead in an instant. For the time being, Constructors Championship, AlphaTauri holding firm in P1. Speaking of AlphaTauri, thought we were going to see a pass there in qualifying. Almost looked like we were heading into turn 1 race style. Thiago's lap time continues to fall down the order. Now P5. Just a minute remaining in the session, so if you're not out on track, your session is done. Not Shumi, currently a 125.4, looking for a better lap time than that. He's currently at the back of the field in P13, and we know he's a faster driver than that. Ruan is retired from the session, so we won't see improvement from him, as is Shakes and Buffelsfontein and Simps as well. Not going to be able to improve. Let's have a look at Wizards. Where is... Ooh, Wizards. Keep on thinking they're going to lose it, but these guys are great drivers. They're always just able to pull it back in the end. And Wizards got that out of shape for a second, but did a fantastic job to hold on to it. We're going to ride on board with Cheddar in the closing stages of this qualifying session. Just 10 seconds to go. And... ooh, wow, internet connection almost gave me a heart attack. I thought he was going to drive straight into the wall. Here we go, Cheddar over the line. Still has a bit of battery left. I wonder if he's going to go for one more. He did get over the line with 2 seconds remaining, but he did not improve on that. There is Don Rabico, currently the man P2 in your Drivers' Championship. Looking for a improved lap time. Currently fastest lap for him is a 123.8, and it's only good enough for 8th place. No, Canada's not the easiest circuit to pass on. You want to start a little higher up the field than that. And he's not going to be starting higher up the field than that because he's come into the pits. So who else is on track? Wizards is done. Not Shumi was able to improve. Remember, he was at the back of the field in P12 or P13. He's got all the way up into P4. So back of the second row for him. Django P5, Logic P6. And I think Maestro is going to get a position of 7th. Don't think anyone else behind him can improve. There is no one else behind him. Ooh, and getting out of shape, Cheddar. Last man out on circuit is this one here, and he's just pulled into the pits. So I think we can safely say that is the end of quali. And what a session it was. Now it's actually starting to look like intermediate conditions. Just a little too late. If you've just joined us, A reminder, this is Season 5, Round 7. We are in Montreal, Canada. And if you've just joined us, you've just missed qualifying. But luckily for you, the real deal comes up next. There are your official qualifying results. Sims taking pole position with a 122 flat, and nobody else really came close. Then Wizards P2 with a 122.8, Cheddar P3 with almost an identical lap time, 122.8. Then Logic P4, Natsumi P5, Django P6, Thiago P7, Don Rabico P8, Shane in P9, and Welsh makes up your top 10. Outside your top 10, it's Midas in P11, Shark P12, Ruan P13, Shakes P14, and making up your grid, Buffelsfontein in P15. Got a few viewers watching, but the comment section is completely abandoned. I'm going to presume all the viewers are sitting in the cockpit of a car, and that's why there's nothing happening in the comment section. Right now we look at the pit lane. This is obviously the short break that we have where guys get to choose that final strategy, that tire compound. What are they going to start on? Doesn't look like weather's going to play a role. Seems like blue skies. And now we head into a 50% distance race around the circuit Gilles Villeneuve. 14 corners, 8 to the left, 6 to the right, 4.3 kilometers in distance. No elevation change to speak of, a relatively flat track. The only track flatter than this one, Qatar. And there's your facts for the day. Now we've got the red lights. The red lights go off, and off do the cars go. There we go. We head off into turn 1. Hopefully we get a clean turn 1. It can be a messy section, this. We've seen it in the past. Seems like everybody's getting through turn 1. Nicely done. Turn 1 and Rivazza. As a result, no turn 1 mayhem. Simps leads the way from Wizards. That gap already up to a second. It's going to be so important to stay out of DRS. I think we will see DRS trains today, and if you can be the one that breaks the DRS train while everybody else battles, you can really run away with this race, considering we don't have any safety cars, of course. At the front, Sims leads the way. He's not under any pressure. Wizards losing ground, 1.4 seconds adrift, now coming under pressure from Cheddar. Remember, Cheddar is your championship leader. Then we've got Logic in P4 and Django P5. Natsumi, he's lost the position, he's gone down to P6. In that top 4, everybody has maintained position. Sims, fastest lap of the race, 1:17.1. That lap time will come down as the race goes on, as these cars get lighter. Next thing we should look at is the tires. Let's have a idea of who's doing what. Looks like the entire field just about has the same idea, starting on a set of mediums. Just P10, P11, Shakes and Midas. And as I say that, Midas is falling down the order. I wonder if there's an issue there. May have just had a off-track excursion, maybe just leaving the circuit. Maybe it was a spin, we didn't see it, but he lost approximately 4 positions. And now he's down in P15. But as I was saying, just Shakes in P10 and it's Midas now in P15. The only 2 drivers on the track with an alternative strategy. They're starting on hards. And no one in the field has ventured onto the soft compound. Sim still leads the way. Wizards P2, Cheddar P3, Logic P4. Those top 4 cars just holding station for now. No crazy moves, no crazy lunges. Long way to go. Lap 3 of 35. Django just losing touch now with the cars in front of him. He's going to come under pressure from Notsumi and Tiago behind him. Shane also in that group of cars. And Don Ravico. P2 in your Drivers' Championship. All the way down in P9 at the moment. As mentioned, AlphaTauri lead the Constructors' Championship. Those two cars in P3 and P9, so both cars in the points. But for the time being, Simps seems to have no competition. Gap 2 seconds at the front. Wizards, though, hasn't been able to clear his lines as the car in front of him. He has Cheddar right on his tail. 0.5 of a second is the gap, and now DRS is going to become a factor. Cheddar sets the fastest lap of the race in P3, and Ruan almost immediately gets the first penalty of the race. He also loses a position to Buffelsfontein. Two Ferraris now P12, P14. Hopefully the race will come to those Ferraris a little later. Simps on the move. Remember that gap went all the way up to 2 seconds. Now it's 1.7, so it looks like Winsons is just pulling him back a little bit. This is a set of mediums, and depending on what the guys are planning on doing strategy-wise, you might want to take these mediums as long as you possibly can. And in order to do so, you really can't afford to abuse them in the opening laps. So maybe Sim's just managing his pace a little bit. Another thing to keep in mind, sometimes guys under fuel, expecting safety cars. Safety cars do not happen, or maybe not as many safety cars as you expected. And then fuel management becomes a serious problem towards the end of the race. So if you see a gap quickly climb and then stabilize, it's usually because the car in front is doing some sort of management, either on the rubber or on the fuel. For the time being, no management for Cheddar. Cheddar's in P3, and he knows Simps is getting up the road. He needs to get past. He's going to keep on applying the pressure to that horse. And while applying pressure to the horse, he's going to have pressure coming up in his mirrors, because logic is right there too. DRS train for P2. Further down the field, Notsumi in P5. He's also got a lot of defending to do. He's ahead of Django, Maestro and Shane. So we have a DRS train followed by a little break, followed by another DRS train. And then exactly the same situation. 2.8 seconds adrift from Shane. We have Shakes, and he leads a DRS train of his own. So we have 15 drivers on track, spread across 3 DRS trains. Too much action, not enough camera angles. Cheddar's still fighting for P3, but he hasn't made a significant move on the horse driver for now. Everything's been pretty patient from the drivers in the top 4. Nobody doing anything crazy. Like I said earlier, so long to go. You're on a fresh set of mediums. Still so much that needs to play out in this strategy. And if you get too crazy in these opening laps, you can throw all of that strategy out of the window. We made notes a lap or two earlier that the gap was coming down to 1.6, 1.7 seconds, and that Wizards was pulling Simps back towards him. But I think maybe Simps was just doing a little bit of ERS management, saving up some battery, because that gap's gone back over the 2 second mark. Seems like Simps is just managing the pace, managing the gap. Knows all those cars behind him. are on the same strategy. They're all on mediums. He doesn't need to worry about P2 being on a hard tyre, going further than him. Doesn't need to do all those calculations. Everybody behind him on the same strategy. Just needs to worry about managing the pace, keeping a healthy gap, and making sure DRS does not threaten his lead. Evening to definitely Duke, also now in the comment section, busy comment section. Thanks for supporting SAFRL. Remember, this is round 7 of season 5 here in Canada. Just the 15 drivers making it to the grid this evening. No retirements to speak of. Still a good opportunity for everyone in this field to pick up points tonight. Cheddar has cleared Windsors. And luckily for him, he did it before that DRS zone. So he crossed the DRS timer, then made the pass, then got DRS on the straight. And that's just going to give him the ability to just eke out a bit of a gap. But Windsors will have DRS to come back at him. And I don't think we've seen the end of this battle just yet. Logic is sitting just behind these two, watching them fight. And I can't believe what I was going to say, but I was going to say something. I'm not going to finish the sentence because commentator's curse happened before I could even finish the sentence. Logic loses his way. He was really all over the back of those two, was doing a great job. And he went sideways into the concrete wall, lost his front wing, and I think as a result of that spin, it's caused a virtual safety car. Obviously, the benefit of pitting under virtual safety car is nowhere near as high as pitting under a full safety car. But Logic will be hoping to get back to the pits before the end of the virtual safety car, just so everyone around him is going that little bit slower while he's stationary. But as he arrives in the pits, we get a green flag, and Simps is back underway. I understand the virtual safety car and that it was designed to try and keep the races more flowing, not bringing out the safety car for each and every situation. But one thing that does annoy me about the virtual safety car is it's supposed to be completely neutral. Your gaps are supposed to be what they were when the safety car began, but that is not often the case. Often if you're caught napping, you can lose a bit of time to the car in front of you. And if you know how to utilize that delta to its extreme, you can make time. And that's why Cheddar's gap or at least Simpson's gap back to Cheddar at the beginning of the virtual safety car was 2 seconds. Now it's almost 4. So the leader was able to gain an incredible 2 seconds under virtual safety car. Buffelsfontein and now Jacques as well. Both of them going past the McLaren. Very nicely done. Teamwork from the two. We didn't get to see it, but Buffelsfontein and Jacques, the two Ferrari teammates, they went past Welsh almost simultaneously. So the only situation I can imagine is that Buffelsfontein pushed Welsh slightly wide and allowed his teammate to come through as well. And now both Ferraris up into the top 10 for the first time in this race. Simps still leads the way, 3.6 seconds is a gap, so Cheddar is starting to pull that gap in a little bit. You can just see a lock up there on the hairpin for Simps. Windsor's P3, he has definitely not given up on P2 and even P1 in this race. Still such a long way to go, 25 laps as we say. Windsor's been able to pull off that same pass go over the DRS marker, then make the pass, then get DRS down the main straight to actually get away from the car you just made a pass on. I don't think it should work that way. I think DRS should always work for the car behind. But depending on where your DRS markers are, and they do vary from track to track. We saw in Brazil over the weekend, there was a very different scenario. You get DRS, lose the lead, and for the very next DRS zone, the car is able to come back at you. At some circuits, you'd get DRS, and into the next zone, you'd get it again, and just be able to drive away from the car behind you. This gap at the front, very stable, 3.7 seconds. Sim's just doing exactly what he needs to do, and not pushing more than that. Cheddar's in P3, he lost the P2 one lap ago. Hasn't made an immediate move back on the harsh, chooses to just sit on his gearbox. Django has since been promoted to P4 because of the misfortunes of Logic, who lost his way just a few laps ago. That initiated the first and only virtual safety car of the session. Been a clean race up until now, no retirements. I was going to say not much penalties, but then I looked at the screen. I should probably look at the screen more often. There we go, lots of penalties on your screen. And very importantly, probably the most important penalty on that timing screen is the 3-second time penalty for your leader Sims. So now you've got to keep that in mind for the rest of the race. Whenever you look at this timing screen and it says that Sims has a lead over P2, you need to take 3 seconds out of that equation. That is not an honest lead. So that is a 4.2 second gap. It's a 1.2 second gap. And remember, whoever's in P2, if they can stay without a penalty next to their name, they will not need to make that pass on circuit. They just need to be within the 3 seconds. So penalties can really come back to bite everyone at the end of this race. So important to keep a clean sheet. Wizard still in P3. Now, I thought we were going to see an attack there, but not the right part of the circuit. Just sit on the gearbox, wait for the casino straight. And there's not going to be much Cheddar can do to defend. There we go, just need to be as close as you can. Make sure you get the superior traction. And there we go, DRS, if you've got a little battery, punch that in too, just for a bit of assistance. And he didn't even need the DRS. DRS and slipstream, more than enough. And Wizards retakes P2 before ever reaching the chicane. And as a result, you can see he's just got DRS down the main straight to assist him in getting away from Cheddar. While all of that happens down the road, we have a much quieter part of the racetrack, P4. Django. Little bit of pressure from the car behind him, but he's managing the gap to just over a second. Then shakes as well, in a bit of space, in a bit of clean air. Don Rabico, so far P8, hasn't really been able to come through the field. Based on his form this season, I expected him to come through the field with relative ease. But it just shows you the quality of the lineup here at SAFRL. So many great drivers. We may have 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 drivers that are dominating the podium. but there is nobody slow in this lineup. So coming through the field effortlessly is just not going to happen. Don Rabico, as we say that, he decides to pull into the pits. He's not going to be able to clear those cars, so he decides, I'm going to go in, put on a fresh set of rubber, get into some clean air, and try and undercut these guys. Make up the positions off the circuit. Where did Don Rabico emerge? There we go, he's still in the pits. Well, he's emerging from the pits. There we go, he's going to lose a few more positions. Could actually come out in last place. Seems like the Merc just gets past Don Rabico at the end there. So Don Rabico down to P13. And that's how close the field is right now. If you're in the front and you make a pit stop, you're going to come out in the final 4 cars of the field. So you really need to choose when do you make that lap time. There's no point in having an undercut if you're going to come out in traffic. Simps now, your leader, comes into the pits. Wizards takes the lead of the race. Where is Cheddar? Cheddar has also come into the pits. He is leaving the pits, as is Simps. Wizards chose to stay out. Django chose to stay out, so he's been promoted up into P2. Simps emerges from the pits. And I think he actually got out ahead of Django. He did get out ahead of Django. That was pretty last minute, but Simps, from the lead of the race, was able to pit and re-emerge in P2. Just 9 seconds adrift from Wizards. Remember, Wizards still needs to pit. And he's been one of the later runners. Him, Django, Bifflesfontein and Welsh, they have taken these mediums the longest in the race. Surely he's going to get rid of these mediums on the next lap. Let's ride trackside with your leader. Let's have a look. I'm almost certain he's going to dive into the pits at the end of the straight. It's always quite a funny sight when you're expecting the drivers to jump on the brakes and go into that chicane and they just go straight for a second. You think, hold on, what's going on? Oh yes, it's the pit lane. Wizards into the pits. That allows Simps back into the lead of the race. Django pits from P2. And now Shakes still out. Remember, he started on the hard tire. One of the 2 cars to start on the hard compound. So he's able to go a little longer than everyone else around him. And Shakes now in P3. I'm not sure if Simps made a mistake, we didn't see that, but Django leads the race. There we go, just a correction on your timing screens, apologies for that. We have had timing screen glitches in the past, and I really hope that that is not the case. It's going to make the rest of this race incredibly difficult to commentate on when you don't know who's actually in what position, but it seems to have sorted itself out, thank goodness for that. Simps leads the way. And now Cheddar takes on Shakes, and almost no competition. 1 lap old hards versus 16 lap old hards. Not much Shakes could have done. And Cheddar puts himself back up into P2. And as you can see, every time there's a little change in the race, he's just missing out. At the beginning of that virtual safety car, the gap was 2 seconds. At the end, it was 4. At the beginning of those pit stops, the gap was 4 seconds. At the end of them, gap is 6. So each time, Simps just eking out a little bit of time and making that gap bigger and bigger. Important for him. Don't get any more penalties. Three-second time penalty for multiple warnings now also going to Shane. That's the Alfa Romeo driver currently in P11. Not the best night for Alfa Romeo so far. P11, P13. Shane and Ruan. Simps all on his own out front. 6.2 seconds the gap. Shake's losing positions like it's nothing. Now wins it up into P3. And the top three that have been the top three for a majority of the race are now the top three again. Windsor's fastest lap of the race, a 1:12.5. I'm sure the guys did their testing. It's interesting to see nobody has chosen the soft at any point in this race. Can only assume that the tyres' life is not a particularly big one. Maybe the advantage over the medium isn't a particularly big one. But it seems like nobody has chosen to make the soft part of their strategy. Gap at the front continues to grow, 6.8 seconds now. Crucially, that 3-second penalty remains a 3-second penalty for Simps. He doesn't want it to get any bigger. Every time you get a 3-second penalty, you give yourself so much work. As an example, Simps leads the way from Cheddar by 7 seconds. If he were to get another penalty, that gap would effectively come down to a second. So all that on-edge driving, giving it everything, pulling every tenth of a second out of every corner that you possibly can, driving on the edge, 3-second penalty, and you've thrown all of that out the window. Now a 5-second penalty for Shane for speeding in the pit lane, so he's not having a good time. Did see a few penalties pop up on our screen. We weren't able to read all of them. Simps still 3 seconds, Windsor's 3 seconds. Same for Jacques, Midas and Biffelsfontein. Then on 6 seconds we have Maestro and Welsh. And then we've got even a little bit higher. We've got Logic on 8 seconds. Shane on 11. And his teammate on 12. The two Alfa Romeos sharing 23 seconds of penalties between the two of them. And there we go, it's just come up on your screen. We were speaking about it just earlier. 3-second time penalty for Simps. He already had one 3-second time penalty. So that means crucially that time is now 6 seconds. Cheddar 7.7 seconds down the road. This will give him a new hope. If he was looking at this race thinking, I can't make up that gap with the laps remaining, all of a sudden that 8-second gap is not an 8-second gap. It's a 2-second gap. And it might just fuel him just to give that little bit extra, push that little bit harder and bring himself back into this race. But if he's going to do that, needs to close the gap to below 6 seconds. Natsumi, P5. Good race, good solid result so far. Shakes in P6 was ever so briefly in second place. Django also led this race at a stage. Logic, P8. He's having a good recovery drive. Remember, he was in this earlier. P2, P3, fighting for second place. He was in P4, just sitting, lurking, waiting for a mistake for the two cars in front of him, but instead, the mistake came from him. And it took him to the back of the field. And it went from a race at driving at the front, waiting for an error, to a drive where you would have to make several passes and come through the field. Just one mistake can change your entire outlook on this race. And that's if you're lucky enough not to retire as a result. Simps has responded to that penalty. He knows he needs to get out of that penalty situation, so he has increased the gap. And now this is not going to help the situation at all. Simps will simply be able to run off into the distance, because Wizards and Cheddar, they're fighting over P2, as they have been for most of the race. According to your results on track so far, got a virtual safety car, so let's just have a look at this. Simps, your leader, 12.1 seconds. He is 5th in the championship. All your top performers in the championship, Cheddar, your leader, are in the driver standings. He's in P3. Then we've got Don Rabico, who's all the way down in P10. Then your next two drivers are the two Mercs of Logic and Midas, and they're in P8 and 9. So we could have a little switch in the championship after this round if things were to remain the same. But they often do not remain the same. Sim still leads the way. That gap has come down ever so slightly, 9 seconds. That's probably as a result of the virtual safety car. Tiago in P4. Goodness me, he's got a drive through next to his name. That is not what he would have wanted. He's got a drive through next to his name. Ooh, and we've got carbon fiber all over the track. What happened there? Luckily that Alpine ghosts as it goes into the wall of champions and shakes. He got to see all of that action happen right in front of him now. Tiago has come in. I'm not quite sure what happened there. He's got a drive through, but the team chose to pit him, which means he'll still have a drive through. So he's going to have to go around, do another lap, and either serve his drive through on this lap or the next, or face disqualification. Fortunately, I'm commentating in a few leagues at the moment, so I'm not 100% sure if it was in SAFRL. But last week sometime I was commentating in a race where a driver got a drive-through and then a safety car came out. He did 2 laps without doing the drive-through, and then the safety car came out. And as the safety car went back in, he didn't immediately pit. That was the 3rd lap, needed to follow the safety car into the pits, didn't do so, thought he could have one more lap, and immediately DSQ'd from the session, off the leaderboard. Drive through, not a penalty you can play with. Just that 3 lap time limit. Logic up into P5, but he's got 11 seconds worth of penalties next to his name. That's really going to hurt him. Especially when you've been looking to make a pass, you've been chasing the man in front of you for so long. Eventually you get the pass done, you look at the seconds next to your name in terms of penalties, and you just sigh, because all of that was really for nothing. Position has not changed. Simps leads 8.5 seconds. Wizards is in P2 and crucially has a 3-second penalty of his own. So Simps will be pretty comfortable at the moment. 8.3 second gap. So long as Cheddar stays in P3, crucially Cheddar has no penalties, and this is going to change everything. This changes everything. Here we go, folks. Lap 26 of 35, and we have entered into a full safety car. It's Midas seems to be the culprit of that. He is DNF'd and falling down your order. Ruan is also DNF'd. So I wonder if those two cars were somehow involved in each other. Doesn't seem to be the case. Two very different parts of the timing screen. But we've lost It's Midas. We've lost Ruan in this race, and we're under safety car. Presuming we get approximately 3 laps under the safety car, that'll take us through to about lap 29. and we'll have a 6-lap sprint to the end. I wonder who's going to do what. Do people come in, get a new set of tyres, maybe go onto the soft for this final run? It's going to be interesting to see who does what, who chooses to stay out and hold on to track position. Remember, your leader, he's had a pretty easy race up until this point. Things have gone his way, pretty much. He's managed the gap pretty well. But now, he comes under serious pressure. Remember, he's got a 6-second penalty next to his name. Safety car will compress the field, will cancel out all the gaps that have been made up until this point, bring everybody back up into DRS range, and then give us a 6-lap shootout. And in that 6-lap shootout, if you're not able to build a gap that's going to cancel out the 6 seconds worth of penalties, well then, you're not going to finish where the leaderboard says. Lap 27 of 35, we're still behind the safety car. And we're going to remain under safety car for probably another 2 laps. We're still waiting for this field to come together. It's a good opportunity to thank our sponsors. We have a sponsor here at SAFRL. I'd like to thank our sponsors. You can discover the world of sim racing at simulatorcave.com. They're going to be your ultimate destination for high quality equipment and unrivaled support here in South Africa as an official supplier and reseller of Moser and importer of Fanatec with a local warranty. Simulator Cave has you covered. So join Simulator Cave for a simulator experience, or just visit their website to see everything they have available, simulatorcave.com. Give them a visit, and obviously thanks once again for sponsoring us here at SAFRL. Thanks for the safety car so I could get my little ad break in. We are on lap 28 of 35. We have an Aston Martin that appears to be stationary in the pits. That is Tiago. Now I wonder if the safety car is going to wait for him. I don't think the safety car is going to wait for that Aston Martin. There we go, the safety car is not going to wait for that Aston Martin. So that Aston Martin is going to be almost a lap behind. Now, safety car will pull away and all the responsibility falls on the shoulders of the man in the papaya car, Simps. Simps takes on the responsibility of leading this race. It's going to be his decision as to when does he go. And it's going to be the responsibility of the Haas and the AlphaTauri behind him to make sure he doesn't get the jump. In these top 6 cars, everyone has a penalty next to their name with the exception of your championship leader, Cheddar. So in the top 3 here, still in the strongest position at the moment, P3. Next man not to have a penalty. In fact, there's only 2 drivers in your field that do not have a penalty next to their name. And they happen to be Cheddar and Don Rabico. So, not giving away any extra time at AlphaTauri. No penalties at AlphaTauri. Quite remarkable when you look at the rest of the field. Everybody's been able to amount some sort of penalty. But the AlphaTauri is doing exactly what they need to do to stay within the white lines. And it could be crucial at the end of this race. Now Shakes coming under coming under pressure from Wizards. And this is exactly what he doesn't want. He's just picked up another 3-second penalty. I didn't mention it because it popped up on our screens about 5 seconds ago. But he's now up to a 9-second penalty. Cheddar has been able to get past Wizards. And crucially, Cheddar has no penalties next to his name. So remember, while that gap says Cheddar is 0.6 of a second adrift, he's technically leading this race by 2.4 seconds. Let's just have a look at what exactly these penalties are. I think Simps is going to be the biggest loser in the penalties. He's got that 9 seconds. Another man with 9 seconds happens to be his teammate. What's going on with the teammates today? Everybody copying each other. We've got the two AlphaTauris. Apologies to not Shumi. He's also got no penalties next to his name, so good work to him. Two AlphaTauris, no penalties. And then the two McLarens with the most penalties on the night, 9 seconds apiece. See, the team with the most penalties was Alfa Romeo, but since Ruan has retired and Shane has served 5 of those seconds in a pit stop, so he's down to a more regular looking 6-second penalty. But Cheddar now will know, doesn't need to do much on track. If a mistake happens and he can take the lead, he'll take it. But doesn't need to be too aggressive, doesn't need to do anything crazy. He'll want to make the pass on track. Every driver wants to make the pass on track. But he'll know 25 points are in the bag around the corner. Just needs to stay within reaching distance of that car. Not even reaching distance, needs to stay within 9 seconds. And he will remain the championship leader at the end of this race. But in order to do that, he's going to have to hold off Wizards. Yeah, Ruben, these final laps, they're going to be interesting. So much can happen, and really what it really comes down to, and I say it in almost every commentary session I do, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but penalties, penalties, penalties. It's so important just to understand that if you're not driving on your absolute limit, let's say you're losing a 10th or 2 or maybe even 3 every lap because you're not driving on your absolute limit, but you're staying within those lines, it really could be towards your benefit at the end. You could drive on the limit all race, but if you have 9 or 12 or 15 seconds worth of penalties, all that extra driving, all that extra time building up a gap, all that extra time managing your pace, it's gone. And I think that Don Rabico is actually going to get a bit of an advantage out of these penalties. Could also get a position promotion. Don Rabico up into P6. The AlphaTauri is coming strong towards the end of this race. Was wondering about them earlier on. P1, P2 in the championship, leaders of the constructors as well. And a little earlier on in the race, they weren't looking too strong. But right now, the sun is shining on AlphaTauri. Even though Cheddar is in P3, keep in mind those penalties. Cheddar is provisionally your race leader. I think if things were to end right now, this would put Simps as far down as 5th place. And after dominating for so long, managing his pace in the beginning, doing a really great job until that first penalty came in. And then it just starts to play on your mind, and then they start to rack up. You get one, you get another, you get another. And that's when the mistakes start to creep in even more because the pressure builds. When you get that first warning, when you get that first penalty, you can't let it sit on your mind for too much. You've got to get it out of your mind and keep on driving. Don't repeat the same mistakes. Don't get the same corner cut on the same corner. Adjust your driving. Maybe drive a little bit within yourself. But crucially at the end, make sure that that column is empty. Because as we've seen so many times before, and as we've seen tonight, no matter how big you build that gap, if you have penalties and a late safety car happens, there's not much you can do to save your race. Further back in the field, not a lot of action. Further back in the field, not a lot of battles out on track. So we'll continue with your leaders. We just got a battle for 4th place. That's Logic and Shakes battling it out for 4th place. And then we have a on-track battle for 2nd, but this could very well be for the lead. Sims hasn't been able to grow that gap beyond 9 seconds, and they see he's able to pull 6 seconds out of the hat on the final lap of the race. That's right, final lap of the race, lap 35 of 35. And here we are. Just over 4 kilometers to go. Sims leads, final lap, Wizards P2 with a 3-second penalty of his own, Cheddar in P3, crucially no penalties. I'm not going to read out any results until we're absolutely done and the official standings come up on your screen, because I have no idea how this is going to end. Some have 3, some have 6, some have 9, and we'll soon find out, because your leader Sims is heading up the casino straight for the final time this evening. Shane sets the fastest lap of the race right at the end, and there we go, 35 of 35. McLaren over the line, wins the race, or does he? We'll soon find out. He's lost it there, and Cheddar over the line, Wizards over the line, and as predicted, Sims falling down the order, not as far down as I thought. Thought he may fall down all the way to 5th, but as a result of cars behind him having penalties of their own, he was able to salvage a podium. Still waiting for some cars to come over the line. Buffelsfontein the next one over the line, then not Shumi. Was in such a strong position earlier on, but as you can see, just bringing that limping Red Bull over the line with a broken wing. And then your final runner on the evening, and also your fastest lap holder for the evening, Shane P12, 6 seconds of penalties. Not a result he'll remember. He'll put this out of his mind very quickly. And there we go. Season 5, round 7. We've made it. There we go, there are your official results for Season 5 Round 7 here at SAFRL Tier 1. Cheddar takes the victory, very nicely done, from P3 on the grid, then Wizards in P2, Sims salvaging the podium at the end, Shakes P4, Don Rabico P5, Logic P6, Jacques P7, then we have Welsh P8, Buffelsfontein P9, and Natshumi making up the top 10. Sitting outside the top 10, we have Tiago, who made it up into P11, then Shane, who set the fastest lap on that final lap, and then we have the 3 retirements for tonight. That is Django in the Williams, Midas in the Mercedes, and Ruan in the Alfa Romeo. What effect will this have on the championship? What effect will this have on the Constructors' Championship? I'd love to tell you, but my maths isn't that good. So keep keep your eyes on Discord. Results will be coming out shortly, and this is definitely going to have an effect on that championship. I want to thank you all. Thank you everyone who joined us this evening. It's been a great race. It's been a great evening. And we'll be back next week. Same time, same place. But this time, where no Red Bull driver wants to go. We're going to Singapore. Cheers guys. See you then.